we start this show on January 18th, 2020. Why are we doing that? Well, the UConn Huskies just lost to Villanova. And the head coach in his second year as the head coach of the UConn Huskies, which was residing and playing its basketball at the time in its final year in the American Athletic Conference.
Wow.
The AAC's UConn Huskies just lost to the Villanova Wildcats. And again, their head coach in his second year there, coming off his first season there at his 16-17 season, taking over for Kevin Ollie. Dan Hurley had this to say after losing that game to Villanova.
We're on our way back. We got exciting young players. We got an older group of guys that are gonna get enough wins this year that they'll feel good about the way their career ended. We got some exciting young players that are going to help lead us back. We're going to continue to recruit and develop and bring in the type of players that will bring UConn back. People better get us now. That's all. You better get us now because it's coming.
Well, nobody was thinking anything was coming.
Jeez.
After Dan Hurley said, you better get us now. And they weren't thinking that, I'm sure, the following season when they went 15-8. And then even when the next year, in his second year back in the Big East, 23-10. Nobody's thinking that. And nobody was thinking that after UConn lost the Big East tournament final last year, a couple of Marches ago, to Marquette. Nobody was thinking that you better get them now when they showed up as the 4 seed in last year's NCAA tournament where the committee sent UConn out west. Nobody was thinking it when they took the floor against Iona in the first round last year and then beat the crap out of them. Nobody was thinking about Dan Hurley's UConn Huskies as a team that you better get when you're playing them. Nobody. And then they went on a run for the ages last year and beat the tar out of every single individual that they had in front of them last year in winning the NCAA tournament and sending 3 of their starters off to the NBA. Sanogo, Hawkins, and Jackson Jr. Adama Sanogo last year, who was dominant.
MOP last year.
He was indeed. Jordan Hawkins, now he's now the Bucks, by the Bulls, by the way. Jordan Hawkins now the Pelicans, and Andre Jackson Jr. is on the Bucks. Lost 3 starters, their top 2 scorers. Everyone's like, okay, now's when you can get UConn again, right? Nope. Last night, the UConn Huskies repeated and became the 6th team to win it all by taking all 6 games by at least double digits. That's not all. The 23.3 margin of victory in boat racing their way to going back-to-back. That's a record. You know what's also a record? They took all 6 games by a grand total, if you added up all of their win margins together, 140 points. That's a record.
Stupid.
That's a record. In terms of teams to win back-to-back national championships, by winning every single game by at least 15 or more points in their repeat campaign, there's the UConn Huskies, and then there's the UCLA Bruins of 1967 through 69. As a matter of fact, if Miami didn't just throw in a couple of garbage points at the final throws of their national semifinal loss to UConn last year, UConn would have won every single game that they went on their back-to-back run by 15 or more points. Miami's the only team to come as close as 13 points of UConn in the last 2 NCAA men's tournaments. And last night, I mean, my goodness gracious. Last night, Purdue came out on fire. And the player of the year, Zach Edey, who is just
he was great last
absolute
night.
Load.
Yeah.
UConn made the decision of we're going to go one-on-one with him. We got our own 7-footer, and we've got guys that can potentially bother him if we choose to dare to double him, but they basically let him go off and decided to defend the perimeter and take everyone else away. And the final result of that was Zach Edey had 37, and the rest of the Boilermakers had 23. And for only the second time all year long, Purdue attempted fewer than 10 three-point shots. They were 1 of 7 from 3.
Wow.
So they let Zach eat and starved the rest of the team. As a matter of fact, if you remember, towards the end of the first half, which again was competitive through
It was
the
back and
first
forth,
half,
yeah.
right? And you were seeing Purdue get theirs.
Yep. It was low scoring, too. It was
And
the pace that Purdue wanted.
UConn started to get a 2-possession lead cooking with 2 minutes and change to go in the half. Purdue got a good look from 3, and Dan Hurley called a timeout. When Dan Hurley calls timeouts, he doesn't call timeouts. Like, I think he might actually sprain his fingers, jamming it into the palm of his other hand. And then he's kind of out by the... He could get called for 3 seconds after calling a timeout. That's how far away from the bench he is.
That's when he's not pushing his own players.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
He is special, man.
And so his players respond to this. And you are seeing an all-time great run right in front of us in the era of NIL and transfer portals and all of that. And, you know, a lot of these guys you're not going to see them outside of, I would imagine, Stores Chevrolet or, you know, West Hartford Ford or, you know, I don't know if Coaches, the bar owned by one of the all-time great UConn head coaches, who was apparently there last night.
He was there. Jim Calhoun was there.
Calhoun owned. I don't know if Coaches still exists. All I know is I used to go there with Steve Levy and and get our drinks after hours and pour them into plastic cups. So if the cops came, we would just pour it on the floor. That's what I used to do after sports centers, telling tales out of school.
But you were in late 20s back then.
Listen,
Different day,
different time. I mean, this is just when Ray Allen and Rip Hamilton were making their bones.
Who cares?
Hey,
Tyrone Sheffer.
This is an all-time great team. We are witnessing one of the most amazing runs in collegiate sports history. And Dan Hurley was asked exactly where he places his team in that pantheon last night.
Do you feel like this is a historic team, and do you feel like this is one of the greatest teams of all time?
I think it's up there in terms of the greatest 2-year runs that a program's maybe ever had, just because I don't want to. I guess I can't say anything about Duke because I'm going to piss my brother off. But I guess I could say stuff about Florida. But I love Billy Donovan, so I'm in a bad spot. I just think it's the best 2-year run, I think, in a very, very long time, just because of everything we lost from last year's team. To lose that much and again, to do what we did again, it's got to be as impressive a 2-year run as a program's had since prior to whoever did it before Duke. To me, it is more impressive than what Florida and Duke did. Because they brought back their entire teams, and we lost we lost some major players.
067 Gators and the 91-92 Duke Blue Devils, the only teams to repeat since the 90s, and then you go back to UCLA.
Yeah, you mentioned
John Wooden.
Those other teams just were like, we're going to run it back. And so they had kind of their whole teams.
Hill and Leitner. And
this is anybody who can do this in today's age, college football, college basketball, any sport, is so much more impressive to me.
How many fans know about Tristan Newton? Honestly. because he started last year's national championship game, went 19-10-4 in that.
Yep.
And then last night became, here's the list of players to have 20 or more points, 5 or more rebounds, and no turnovers in the national championship game. Since we're talking about this stat level of, I guess, compiling stats, which is, all time. Do you know how many other players have had that?
I'm going to guess 0.
That's correct.
Yeah.
What more do you need to know? And nobody saw it coming. Not a soul saw it coming. Nope. Dan Hurley said, you better get us when you can, back on January 18th, 2020.
And we're like, okay, bro.
It was right. All the way up until they were the 4th seed in last year's tournament.
Like, cool. You play in the AAC.
All the way up, like everybody's watching them, beat up on teams in last year's tournament. And then, okay. And even then, it's just like, okay, so you see Miami and San Diego State in your Final Four. There was even some people of the who did you really beat then? Seriously.
Yeah.
And now the question is, who haven't you beaten up? Who haven't you beaten up? They are killing it.
Rich, good teams win. Great teams cover. 12-0 against the spread the last 2 years.
Look at you.
People made some money riding the Husky wave.
And they are killing it. Congratulations to them. And congratulations to you, UConn fans. I know how much you love hoops. I know how much you love them. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.